this point, am I more of a glorified philosophy teacher or a glorified English teacher? I really don't know. Salutations friends, my name is Brianna Sukiyama-Bund, otherwise known as No Ordinary Scholar, and welcome back to it. And obviously, if you read the title, we are jumping back into the grind of everything with Lord of the Flies. Not necessarily everyone's favorite book. I remember reading it in school. It was an interesting time. It's very interesting that this is a required read for a lot of schools, but that's a whole ass other discussion. If you manage to evade that fate, let me ruin it for you by kind of breaking down what happened. So you got this group of boys, I think it's World War II, and they're being flown out of the country to avoid harm's way. Their plane is shot down. Only children survive the plane crash. They find themselves on this deserted island where they have to try and make a way for themselves to survive, hoping that eventually they will be rescued. You have the main characters really are going to be Ralph and Jack. So you have these two boys representing the two faces of society. Ralph is the civilized. He wants to build houses. He wants to make sure we're keeping track of all the young baby kids. He wants to make sure that we're getting food, but we're also putting things, prioritizing things, and most important to him is a signal fire, so that way if a boat were to go by, they see them and can stop and save the kids. Then you have Jack, who represents the uncivilized, and he wants to kill especially the pigs, but he also he gets kind of a murder boner, and he starts wanting to kill other kids, particularly kids that are siding with Ralph, and he beats the kids, he beats people, and he's murdering people, all for the sake of having fun, all for the sake of being free. And if you haven't watched my video, my stream that I did reviewing this book, you should do that. God, this book hits way too close to home these days. So many things hit way too close to home these days, and I don't like it. But what we're talking about today is at the end of the book, they get saved. A boat comes by and approaches the island, and they're saved, which it's a little sus. So we're gonna talk about the situation, what happens, and I'm gonna explain to you why I actually think Ralph just died, and this is his way of passing on. First, we're gonna start off with a little reading session. He stumbled over a root, and the cry that pursued him rose even higher. He saw a shelter burst into flames, and the fire flapped at his right shoulder, and there was a glitter of water. Then he was down, rolling over and over in the warm sand, crouching with arm to ward off, trying to cry for mercy. He staggered to his feet, tensed for more terrors, and looked up at the huge peaked cap. It was a white-topped cap, and above the green shade of the peak was a crown, an anchor of gold foliage. He saw white drill, epaulets, a revolver, a row of glint buttons down the front of a uniform. A naval officer stood on the sand looking down at Ralph in wary astonishment. On the beach behind him was a cutter, her bows hauled up and held by two ratings. In the stern sheets, another rating held a submachine gun. The ululation faltered and died away. The officer looked at Ralph doubtfully for a moment, then took his hand away from the butt of the revolver. "Hello." Squirming a little, conscious of his filthy appearance, Ralph answered shyly, "Hello." The officer nodded as if the question had been answered. "Are there any adults, any grown-ups with you?" Dumbly, Ralph shook his head. He turned a half-pace on the sand. A semicircle of little boys, their bodies streaked with colored clay, sharp sticks in their hands, were standing on the beach, making no noise at all. "Fun and games," said the officer. The fire reached the coconut palms by the beach and swallowed them noisily. A flame, seemingly detached, swung like an acrobat and licked up the palm heads on the platform. The sky was black. The officer grinned cheerfully at Ralph. "We saw your smoke. What have you been doing? Having a war or something?" Ralph nodded. The officer inspected the little scarecrow in front of him. The kid needed a bath, a haircut, a nose wipe, and a good deal of ointment. "Nobody killed, I hope. Any dead bodies?" "Only two, and they've gone." The officer leaned down and looked closely at Ralph. "Two? Killed?" Ralph nodded again. Behind him, the whole island was shuddering with flame. The officer knew, as a rule, when people were telling the truth. He whistled softly. The other boys were appearing now. Tiny tots, some of them. Brown. with the distended bellies of small savages. One of them came close to the officer and looked up. I'm, but there was no more to come. Percival Wemmy's Madison sought in his head for an incantation that had faded clean away. The officer looked back at Ralph. We'll take you off. How many of you are there? Ralph shook his head. The officer looked past him to the group of painted boys. Who's boss here? I am, said Ralph loudly. A little boy who wore the remains of an extraordinary black cap on his red hair, who carried the remains of a pair of spectacles at his waist, started forward, then changed his mind and stood still. We saw your smoke, and you don't know how many of you there are? No, sir. I should have thought, said the officer as he visualized the search before them. I should have thought that a pack of British boys. You're all British, aren't you? Would have been able to put up a better show than that. I mean, it was like that at first, said Ralph. Before things, he stopped. We were together then. The officer nodded helpfully. I know jolly good show, like the Coral Island. Ralph looked at him dumbly. For a moment he saw a fleeting picture of the strange glamour that had once invested the beaches. But the island was scorched up like dead wood. Simon was dead, and Jack, and the tears began to flow and sobs shook him. He gave himself up to them now for the first time on the island, great shuddering spasms of grief that seemed to wrench his whole body. His voice rose under the black smoke before the burning wreckage of the island, and infected by that emotion, the other little boys began to shake and sob too. In the middle of them, with filthy body, matted hair, and unwiped nose, Ralph wept for the end of innocence, the darkness of man's heart, and the fall through the air of the true wise friend called Piggy. The officer, surrounded by these noises, was moved and a little embarrassed. He turned away to give them time to pull themselves together and waited, allowing his eyes to rest on the trim cruiser in the distance. Okay, so all well and good. They were saved, right? You know better. You know the answer. You know the answer. You clicked the video, you know the answer. Let's just get into it. One of the things that I actually remember being discussed in school was the fact that this fucking boat and this dude, because seemingly it's a dude, his military cruiser's far out. They took a little bit of like a dinghy of the land to see what was going on, see who's there, see if someone needed help, because they probably knew that like a couple planes didn't make it out. So he brought his dinghy in, and this dinghy, which I bet is still not like a fucking tiny ass rowboat. It's got a machine gun on it, right? That thing comes out of fucking nowhere. None of these kids see it approach. None of these kids see it on the beach until the soldier is on top of Ralph. And it's not like it's around the corner or something, because they haven't heard this soldier like, hey, anybody out here? Or he like parked his boat, came back up to the land, and was just gonna like wander around and literally say nothing, and just these kids happened upon him. All these things just kind of appear, like this soldier and the savior just kind of feel dropped into the situation as opposed to having like a point A to point B, you know? Next, and frankly, like some of the biggest tells for me are this soldier does not behave like a normal human being I feel would behave in this situation. Let's break it down. You see this group of kids chasing down a boy. This boy is screaming, which like he sounds terrified. Like, I know kids can be very great actors when they're playing games, or even just genuinely feel like terrified that they're about to lose a game of tag, to the point where in a lot of self-defense and safety classes they teach you to say fire as opposed to help, because if you say help, people are going to think you're a bunch of kids playing. I know that that's an issue, but this kid is screaming. He's going to look absolutely terrified as he's being chased down by these others. Dude just blows up fun and games. It's like a TV show. I've seen that movie. And that's just one. That's just one. Number 2 on my list here is he has no real reaction to them saying that 2 people are dead. Like he's too dead, and he knows that they're telling the truth, but he doesn't ask any further questions. He doesn't, which we'll get into later, he doesn't really console the kids at all. He doesn't say anything to make them feel better. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. Nothing. He just has zero reaction to these kids. And now that he knows they've seen 2 people die, he like just, yeah, happens. It happens. Next is, at this point in time, it kind of touched on it in the little bit that I read, but at this point in time, the kids accidentally, in their attempt to hunt down Ralph, which, did I even really properly explain that? Jack and his uncivilized group are they're hunting down Ralph to try and kill him. Really just because he is the opposite of what they want to do. He is not the freedom that they want to have. And so Ralph is in hiding and he is running around hiding. He hides under some bushes. Jack sets the bushes on fire and that lights the whole ass island that they're on fire. So again, the whole island is on fire and this dude says, what? He said, I saw your fire, I saw your signal fire. We saw your smoke. Like referring to this as if it was an intentional signal fire. And he has the audacity to be like, oh, you setting the whole ass island on fire? Signal fire. But then is upset that they were so uncivilized as to not know how many people were there. But you think that them setting the entire fucking place was like good strategy. That doesn't sound appropriate. That doesn't sound like how someone would react to seeing a bunch of kids on this island that's completely on fire. Is like, oh, they were just trying to call us over. Look at them, they know what's going on. As well as the end where you have him see all of these like little boys that look like they've been on the island for a hot minute. They don't look okay. They all start bursting into tears and he just turns away. Someone would be like, oh my God, these kids need some sort of comfort. These kids need some sort of security right now. I can provide that as an adult that's about to save their fucking lives. To try and explain it a little better, it looks like to me Ralph is superimposing his experience with toxically masculine men onto a situation in which people just would not behave in that same way. And then another thing that I just noticed as I was reading this to you guys was, it says the sky is black. It says the sky is black. It was like morning. Like they started this hunt for Ralph dead morning. It did not take 15, 16 hours to find him. That's not how, it didn't write and read that way. And I know what you're thinking. I already know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking, Brianna, it's black from the smoke. The whole island's on fire. You just said that, so it's black from the smoke. So you're telling me, like this is the conversation we're having. We're saying that this fucking dude pulls up on an island of kids where the whole thing is on fire. The sky is completely black from smoke, and he's just gonna have like he's gonna scold them. He's gonna take the fucking time while they're suffocating to scold them for not knowing how many people are on the island, as opposed to be in emergency mode to get everyone off and out to a safe place. That's what we're saying. So what we're saying is either way, this motherfucker's not a real human being, you know? Either it's now night because he's dead and his days are over, or B, he's dead because this grown-ass adult is in the middle of a fucking burning inferno and still has the audacity to try and be prim and proper as opposed to be like, no point does he even fucking say, let's get out of here, let's get off the island. He doesn't even say that. He's just there. And these kids are basically dying at this point, and he has nothing to offer them aside from some disappointing looks for not being in a better position than this whilst they are here about to be roasted the fuck alive. But that's not even my main piece of evidence towards this. Because as y'all saw in the images I showed you, there's some extra spacing between the whole Ralph is begging for mercy part and them getting rescued. In writing, that type of spacing would be used to help signify a major change, like a change in narrator, an extended change in time, a change in location or a change to a dream sequence. Stay with me here. Just stay with me here. Nothing else really changes. Nothing about the writing of this changes really. Like, you're still in this third person omniscient voice. That's why you can see at the same time, you can see kind of what the soldier dude's thinking as well as what Ralph is thinking. That's the narration style it always had, so that didn't change. We did not change locations or make a change in time, because he's literally standing up on his feet just from the moment of him crying for mercy. Otherwise, I need an explanation as to why these boys that were so hell-bent on killing him decided to get to the point where they were right there, like stabbed half away, and then backed off only to re-hunt him down later and just basically get back to the same position, you know? But this very easily could be transferring to a form of dream sequence, like a scene he's seeing to help him pass over, something like that. Because again, everything about the way that this man is behaving is just not realistic to how a human being would behave in this type of emergency. But how is, like, this boy's 10 years old or something like that. How is he supposed to know that? I still know what you're thinking. At the beginning of the book, Ralph is saying, like, he thinks his dad's gonna be the one to save him. So why, if it's like his dream to help him pass over, why isn't it his dad? Here's my explanation for it. This dude has seen 2 people be murdered. If not a participant, he was a bystander and he did nothing to stop one of these murders. And now he's at a point where he's literally being hunted down like an animal. Excuse me, if I were in that situation, I don't think I would have the amount of hope in me to think that there's any way possible that my hero is gonna be here to save my life at the very last minute, you know? I feel like that would be more jarring and more unrealistic to his mind to, like, see after all of this depression. He literally says he's seen the darkness in man's heart. He's seen the end of innocence. Ralph as a character has lost way too much hope to truly believe that even in his last moments, his father is gonna randomly show up just to save his life. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for your patience. This move has been killing me. But there are things you can do to help if you'd like. First and foremost, subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, as well as subscribing and watching some of my vlogs on the No Ordinary Vlogs channel. That would be great to help build our community. And if you got some spare change in your pocket, you can subscribe to my Patreon, because I just revamped the whole Patreon. You get some really cool things for as little as $2 a month, but when you get the $5 a month, like, you get early access to all my videos, you get to see the notes for the reading streams that I get to do, and for those fans of the Queen of Thieves series, which these books are also linked down below for you to purchase, you are going to be able to get digital exclusive premieres for the books prior to them releasing on Amazon. If any of that sounds interesting to you, links are down below, go check it out. But until next time, valedictions, friends.